I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be...
Pillars, pillars, pillars of franchising. Pillars, pillars, pillars of franchising.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Pillars of Franchising. My name is Kristin Selmeczy. I almost introduced myself as you, Kqaren. This is also Kimsey-Sward. Sorry about that. We're glad you're joining us today. We've got a great show for you. Jerry Akers is back from the IFA Advocacy Summit. We're going to talk a little bit about the changes in California, what that means to the rest of the franchise industry. But first and foremost, we got a little word on the street, and then we're going to talk to the leader of the brand Mosquito Hunters from right here in Illinois. So exciting to hear about that and all the opportunities that they have for somebody to purchase, own, run, and be wildly successful in their business model. So first, Kqaren, let's talk about what's the word on the street today.
Word on the street is that Entrepreneur just recently announced their annual Franchise 500 ranking for the best franchises to open. And I love when that list comes out, just to take a look at, what's on there and kind of what's happening.
Are you like me? Like I immediately go look for our brands, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
which brands are on there?
Yeah.
And I'll say in the top 20, well, they may not be in the top 20 because most of these tend to be food related, though there are some service businesses, and congratulations to those of you who made the top 20.
Right.
I will say that our business is on there, Jerry's business is on there, so not within the top 20, but a very close to the top of that list. So from what I understand, what are the criteria that you see them looking at?
Well, I like it that they have a very nice approach and really take a look at a lot of different areas of the business. They take a look at the costs, which are really important, the fees to open, your royalty fees. They take a full look at that. They take a look at growth, the growth rate, the closures, which are important too. So really taking a look at that. That's two. Third would be the type of support that's offered. Marketing support, training support, everything that's needed, obviously, to help run the business.
Sure.
Fourth is brand strength. And I thought that was interesting, even just the marketing, what they're like in the market. And the last one, get this one, important, financial stability. They actually take a look at audited records, so they really do take a full look at all the different aspects of the business.
Sure. I think what's interesting is if you look at those categories, they really align nicely with some of the items on the FDD. So when we talk or have talked even in previous episodes about some of the things that are most important to know and look at when you're choosing a brand, these all go really quite in line.
Absolutely. They do. And I love that. I also like that they don't just select, you already mentioned it. You mentioned food, and I love food, love all the food franchises. And it's nice as a prospective franchisee to have a choice, choice in different kinds of franchises. For example, I love it. Ace Hardware is on there. UPS is on there. Kumon is on, even Hampton Inn. Those are in your top 10.
Well, and what's crazy is I didn't realize that Hampton Inn was actually a franchise. And the more and more you look at some of these big name hotels, they're franchises.
Absolutely. So I loved that part because I did the same thing. I was like, okay, which food ones are in there? And that's great.
Right.
But, again, it gives people different kind of choices to look at and think about.
Well, I want to give a special shout out to Taco Bell, who ranked number 1. And I had just read today, oddly enough, that they are in 2 states. I forget, California, and I think it was Arizona. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. That they are now serving the Baja Blast that has the Mountain Dew energy drink in it. And I thought, oh, hell no. Don't sell that here because I don't need another addiction. I'm trying to keep my son off of all that, like energy water and Monster drinks, but I'm sure this is going to be a huge seller for Taco Bell. Yeah. So even though they're ranked number 1 now, they are going to be I mean, their sales are going to really, I think, take off on this.
Absolutely.
And so their investment, if people are wondering like, oh my gosh, they're ranked number one, what does that look like? The investment required goes anywhere from 576 up to 3.4 million. They currently have 7,900 locations. So they're a pretty big operation. The other one that we've talked a lot about, I mean, obviously every day I carry my trusty McDonald's when we do the show because I love their iced tea, even though they jacked their price from $1 iced tea up now it's like $1.87. They are 1.4 million investment to 2.5 with almost 40,000 locations.
Crazy. Okay. And did you see on there, the cheapest to open is 7-Eleven.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't think that, because you've got the brick and mortar, so I was fascinated by that.
Yeah. Well, and you have the inventory that you carry. So if we've got any 7-Eleven owners out there, I would love to talk to some of you because I'd like to know how it is that you can open a 7-Eleven for $125,000.
Agree.
So I'm guessing that is if you partner with like a BP or a gas station or something that makes that work.
I would think so. And then last was the whole fastest growing, because I always like to take a look at the different categories.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even heard of the fastest growing one. It was Stratus Building Solutions. I think it's like commercial cleaning. Yeah. And so I thought we need to look into that one too, to see really what's causing their growth. Yeah. And so that's another one to take a look at and do some more research on, because I was not aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of good information. Again, we found that information in Entrepreneur. You can go online and find that. Again, it's the 20 best franchises to open in the U.S. And congratulations to all you brands that made that top 20 list. And without further ado, I think we're going to take a quick break before we split over to Andy Fuller with Mosquito Hunters.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
And welcome back. We've got a slight technical issue here, but I'm sure we will get it worked out in no time. There we are. Welcome back to another episode of Pillars of Franchising. I'm Kristin Selmeczy, and with me is Kqaren Kimsey-Sward. Joining us today is Andy Fuller, the CEO of Mosquito Hunters. Welcome to Pillars of Franchising, Andy.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Great to be here.
So glad to hear from you. So tell us about you and Mosquito Hunters, how you got to where you are today.
So I started Mosquito Hunters here in Chicago, Illinois area back in very late 2013. Started just with a single backpack and built up a team, starting with a couple of my high school buddies, and started getting some momentum, getting some customers in the area, started franchising by 2016. Became a part of the Happiness group, formed Happiness as Happiness was forming in 2018. And here we are today, about 82 franchisees, about 130 locations across the country.
Wow. I have to say, today, because I have a senior in high school, one in college, and one that's a sophomore, and there's been all this talk in the news, which of course my boys love to hear. Hey, Mom, they're saying you don't really have to go to college these days, right? I love the story that you and your buddies started this company really not that long ago. 10 years, that time flies by. And now here you are running this giant franchise system.
I mean, we did go to college, to be fair, but they were my friends from
okay,
back in high school.
Yeah, were you just sitting around thinking, hey, there's mosquitoes around? I mean, I'm serious. Yeah. How did you even think of this? I'm so curious.
I was working in corporate America. speaking of college, got the college degree, and I paid for college by doing college painting, house painting. So I kind of accidentally fell in love with entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Being a part of that. And then got my degree and thought, well, I need to do what you're supposed to do with a degree. Let me get a job at as big of a fancy company I can find. And I went through a really long interview process, got this job with a really big Fortune 500 company. I got the job thinking, this is it. This is my career. I'm going to climb the ladder. Now we can build all these things, but we've got all these resources because we're a multi-billion-dollar company now. And a year into that job, I took a look around and realized I hated it. Just hated it. All the things that we know corporate America to be. Just everybody seemed to be more interested in getting their bonus and not getting blamed for things, getting as much work off of their plates as possible. This wasn't the sort of thing I wanted to spend my career doing. What I really realized I wanted to do is own my own business again. But question is, what business do you get into? Because there's, as you all know, as business owners, there's seemingly millions of different businesses, at least thousands in reality, that you could get into. And so I got into mosquito control because I wanted something that was in-home services. I wanted something that was recurring revenue. I wanted something that was in an emerging space, something where there was limited competition, where we were early to the market by a bit. There was opportunity to innovate without just trying to come up with the lowest price in town, something that was simple enough that I could learn enough to be dangerous within a reasonably short period of time without having to go back to school all over again. Something where I didn't have to just, hire a team and take their word for it. Something where I could actually understand it and, manage that team without having to go back to school or get any sort of special training or be an apprentice or anything like that. I wanted something that provided value to the community. I wanted something that I could explain to, anybody. They say, what do you do for a living? And actually enjoy talking about it. And so we kind of put all those things together. It led me to mosquito control, not just because I had some deep hatred for mosquitoes. I'd say more of a love-hate relationship at this point. But it just checked those boxes better than anything else really could.
Well, I first have to say, for all the parents out there with kids like mine, thank you for pointing out that you did indeed go to college. And I am sure that between going to school and having a job in corporate America, you learned some invaluable skills to help build the company you have today.
Absolutely. College is a good idea.
Yeah.
For your son, for anybody.
So what are some of the things that you took away from your corporate job that you have kind of been driven to not repeat as an entrepreneur building a franchise empire today?
Great question. I think accountability is probably the most important thing. So be ready to take the call, for whatever your job is. Be willing to hold yourself accountable first and foremost. I'd say candidly, there are a lot of bad managers at the place I was working with. A lot of people got promoted for the wrong reasons. That's kind of what prompted me to want to get out of there. Is I looked at everybody who was, above me on the totem pole, so to speak, and I thought, there's not a single person here where I want their job. There's not a single person here who I really, honestly admire. There's a lot of the expression CYA. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we need to spell that one out. You guys can Google it, listeners. But
we're familiar with that one.
Yeah. So I didn't want to live in that kind of culture, and I thought, I don't want to be that kind of boss. I want to be the kind of boss who gives people a lot of space. I believe in giving people trust, giving them room to make mistakes. When they do make mistakes, I don't rub their noses in it and try and make them feel bad about it. I would see a lot of people like dressing somebody down in a meeting publicly. I really didn't care for that. So I just think giving people room to act like adults is probably my biggest takeaway. I didn't see enough of that in corporate America, and I wanted to take that with me with my own business.
Well, Kqaren, that's right up your alley, Kqaren.
It is. And I was going to say, so how do you take and then transfer that? Because that is so important, by the way, so key. So then how do you transfer that back then when you're even onboarding your, new franchisees? I mean, what are some things that you really pay attention to in that area so you don't get those same people?
it's a couple different things. I mean, when we're talking about, the local business here in Chicago, you have somebody who's starting as a technician. They typically don't have a ton of experience professionally at all. And, a lot of them are younger. A lot of them don't deal with many adults. I came to learn when they were coming on board. The adults that they knew were their parents and their friends' parents. And the concept of, if I sleep in on Friday, I'm going to ruin the weekend for a lot of my customers. Like that's new to a lot of our employees who start off as technicians. And so giving them some space to make those mistakes and then realize what the repercussions are quickly. There are those who really struggle, and those are the people who don't really work out. And then there are those who really rise to the occasion, who are just looking for an opportunity to be treated as an adult. And those are the ones who find themselves thriving, in the system. And then for franchising, I'd say it's a totally different ball of wax, because of course, the relationship with the franchisee is, I would say it's very different from an employee relationship.
Yes.
Because we're allies going up a mountain together, and we're sort of the Sherpa climbing up the mountain with them, who's gone up and down the mountain before. I'd say with them, it's a matter of just kind of sharing stories, sharing best practices of what's worked, what hasn't worked, mistakes that I've made, and just having a culture where owners feel comfortable sharing their mistakes with each other. So that way we can lift each other up. We all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. But what I love so much about franchising is it's a tribe of business owners doing the exact same thing that you're doing, running your exact same business. It just happens to be in maybe a different part of the country. So
I like that you
be
called
open
it a
with
tribe.
each other, that we can share. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A tribe or a family. I mean, that we talk about that all the time, the power of franchising. And so, I mean, I have to imagine some of the stories that you tell certainly help, but what you've built within your business is a culture, right? That culture of allowing people to rise to the top on their own. How do you get your franchisees to understand the importance of having such a similar culture in all of these locations across the U.S.? Because that always seems hard, right? That transfer of knowledge, the transfer of culture.
Yeah, I think every franchise owner has their own subculture, because it's their own business. It's their own independent business. And I'd say first and foremost, you have to be authentic as a business owner. If you pretend to be somebody else, if you pretend to talk in a way that you don't talk, or be any way that you are not truly, if you try to put on airs or put on a face, like eventually everyone will realize, that that's not you. So just start from a place of authenticity and honesty, and a lot of things happen to fall into place after that. So I'd say that's probably the most important thing is, be straight up. Otherwise, it's really important that we bring in on the right franchisee up front. So it's really important that we have really candid conversations before you're even officially a franchisee. So that means having some really in-depth conversations with our franchise development team. That means having lots of calls with existing franchisees and having candid conversations. We're not a part of those conversations. That's between you and the franchisee, and you can talk about whatever you want, anything you want, and set expectations. Talk to people who are doing well. If you talk to somebody who's not doing well, ask some questions, qualify, why is that? And, as an adult, as a hopefully future business owner, you can use your discretion to figure out what makes sense for you and how you want to run your business.
Who's an ideal candidate then for a franchise? You were talking about this when you're taking a look at it, and you're vetting them as well as they're vetting you, right?
Yeah.
So who's your ideal candidate?
Candidate is the as far as what they've done before really isn't as material as kind of what's within them. And the most successful franchisees are the ones who are willing to go outside of their comfort zone, do the things that maybe they don't want to do, that aren't fun, but they do it because they want to make their business better. They realize that the object of the game is to optimize the value of the asset that they own. And anything else that you do with your time and energy that isn't leading to optimizing the asset is really just a waste of time and energy. I'd say that the best candidates and owners are the ones who are willing to take a look in the mirror and worry about the things that they can control.
That's a really good point. You brought something up there that I'd like to have you elaborate on a little bit, and that's the amount of time. So often I get phone calls from people who are looking for a brand that allows them this semi-absentee ownership. And I always kind of chuckle because I think, geez, the first couple of years you own your business, don't even think about being semi-absentee. And even beyond that, that phrase is not quite what it really is in most businesses. When you are operating Mosquito Hunters up here in the north, you've got a period of time that there are no mosquitoes. So what does that look like on a kind of a yearly cycle for your owners?
I agree with you. I hear about semi-absentee all the time. It's kind of like the big buzzword of the decade in franchising, certainly franchise development. You hear about semi-absentee. I really don't care for that term, honestly, because it gets misinterpreted.
Yep.
Someone like me is a franchisor or maybe a successful franchisee. They hear semi-absentee and they're thinking one thing. And then you have a candidate who has very, very limited time to invest in their business. And they hear that exact same word, semi-absentee, and they think something totally different. And it's just, it's a very dicey word to use. And so I really don't like to say that Mosquito Hunters is a semi-absentee business model, because I don't want to leave any room for confusion. It's very hard work when you're getting this business started. You need to challenge yourself in ways that you've never challenged yourself before.
Yes.
Certainly, if you've never owned a business, you're going to be going into uncharted waters, and you're going to have, moments of doubt and moments where you're going to be very frustrated, but you're doing it with a team of other people who've been there and done that before. And that's the big difference.
Love it.
So it is, to get to your other question about the business model itself, the widget, I'd say, we started off at our core being a mosquito control business, but over time, it's been important to us to diversify our offering for our customers. So we do actually quite a bit more than just mosquito control. And the big reason is we like working with business owners who want to build big businesses. And when we diversify our offerings, it gives a franchise owner more opportunity to build a bigger business. So that means not just mosquito control, but tick control, flea control, perimeter pest control, which includes ants, spiders, cockroaches, some other bugs that vary depending on where you're at in the country, but it extends your season by quite a bit. Mosquito stations are also a really great upsell opportunity for us, but rodent control is something that we're just getting into as of 2023. That's a huge opportunity. It's gross, but because it's gross, it's a really good business to get into.
In Chicago.
Exactly. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it. So you're going to pay other people to do it. Not unlike, the maid business. It's like, I could clean my toilet, or I could give you money and you clean my toilet. Like,
that's right.
That's the whole value proposition. We like the pest control business for that reason, is a lot of people don't want to deal with that.
Exactly.
And so they're willing to give us money to do that. It's a good deal. It's a win-win, for the customer and for us.
So is it businesses then that you're more of a target audience than consumer? Is it both? Just kind of curious as far as that mix.
Our foundation is serving residential, but there's a lot of opportunity with commercial, and there's a lot of opportunity with homeowners associations as well.
Oh, yeah.
Effectively residential, but it's sort of a hybrid, if you will, because you have to deal with a property manager or somebody like that to work with the HOA. But yeah, that's our bread and butter is residential, but we have a number of commercial accounts across the country. Our sweet spot seems to be golf courses, driving ranges, restaurants, hotels, things like that.
Well, I could refer you to a couple places who need it.
Yeah, no kidding. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. And we're right here in the same area.
Yeah, exactly. But we won't talk about that on the air. So what kind of investment are we talking to open? I assume you guys do you do territories? Tell us a little bit about how you divide that up, and then what kind of costs are you looking at for somebody who might want to open a Mosquito Hunters in their area?
They should be ready to spend over $100,000 to get started. As far as territories, it varies. I think it's better to open up a conversation with the franchise development director. We can figure out something that works for you. But every territory is dedicated. It's based on zip code. So it's your exclusive territory.
Okay.
And then what we really have learned, franchisees ask me all the time, like, if you could go back in time and do anything different, And what would you do? The number one thing I would do differently is I would have focused on density from day one. So a franchisee will start off with, let's just say this is their territory. We coach very aggressively to focus on a chunk here. Yes. Focus on building as much density here, build up a wall of sound. So everybody who lives in that area, it looks like they can't turn their head or sneeze without seeing a Mosquito Hunters truck come by, or see a lawn sign, or see Gunther, our handsome mascot, standing at a busy intersection. If you build up that kind of wall of sound, you get this real aggressive, accelerated trajectory. So that way you can get a lot more customers quickly. So yes, territory size matters. Absolutely. It's not to be overlooked, but the way that you really make this business model work for you is focus on, one small chunk of it and build up chunks at a time.
I think that's really a great point, because, we went through this transition where we look to expand. They look at your penetration rate within each zip code to find out where are you, to make sure there's always some stuff left on the table, right? And so it's really important to make sure that you're making the most of what you have before you just continue to grow sideways and outward.
It's so hard, because you start a business and you sign the deal and you pay the money and you get all your startup costs invested in, and then you have this moment everybody does, you think, oh crap, oh, this is real now. It's like the roller coaster coming up. You hear click 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 as you're going up, and you have this feeling, and it's like, I need to make this work. I have to make this work. This is real. I have bills I need to pay. In a lot of cases I have mouths I need to feed. And so it's really tempting, if you're not thoughtful and disciplined from day one, to take customers from all ends of the territory, or even outside of the territory.
Love it.
And you just need to be really, really thoughtful and careful about that, because it seems like a win in the short term, but in the long term, you can really be sabotaging yourself if you're not focusing on building density. Because when you have density, every single stakeholder wins. The employee wins because he or she is making a lot more money per day and per hour. The customer obviously wins because they're getting serviced faster. And then the business owner wins because you're generating more revenue per day and at a better profit margin, because you don't have the same overhead costs.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting, because I will say that was probably, my intention was to start in the immediate area surrounding, because you have vehicles, right? They're all logoed out. And so we started that way, but then the phone starts to ring and you're going from one side of your territory to the other side, and you lose so much in productivity and fuel costs. And, then your employees are like, hey, I really need to make more money. And if you figure out the scheduling piece, they can get a lot more done in one day by being in one area than being in 16 different towns at a time, or within a day. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway for anybody who has a service business that's going throughout a territory.
Absolutely. And kind of think of that ahead of time, be very mindful and planful. The next question would be, I bet you get this asked a lot, and we talk a lot about this. How long does it take for someone to get ramped up where they are profitable? I mean, what do you tell your perspective?
I'd say that, how hard you put your foot on the accelerator is really up to you.
Yeah.
And everything that we coach in our model is with the intent of you, again, optimizing your asset value and getting to cash flow positivity as quickly as possible. Nobody is doing this for their health. You get into this business because you get a lot of satisfaction and validation from it, but a lot of that comes from being successful and being profitable and building a team. And like those things don't happen, without executing the model. And so the model, there's no fluff, there's no filler. Stick to your knitting, stick to what we're coaching. And if you can do that, then you're gonna make that curve as short as possible. That also means having coaching sessions and an ongoing rapport sessions with existing franchisees, just so you can stay focused and kind of keep the shiny things out of your view. I
like that. I'm distracted by shiny things all the time.
Me too. Me too.
I think it's part of what makes us business owners is, we follow our hearts a lot of the time, and that there's a lot of good that comes from that. But there's a dark side of that too. So we all need to be thoughtful about where we're putting our time and energy as business.
Well, and that's why it's good to have strong franchisor systems. You were talking about having, being very mindful even with your onboarding and how you did that, because I think the more you can share with people the pitfalls and the whys, then people will follow the system much more so.
Sure. Well, that leads us to a question. I mean, I'm kind of curious about, well, two things. First of all, is there a market? And obviously a franchise development person knows this right away, but I'm sure they share this vision with you or you share with them. What markets are you really targeting to expand into now? Are there some ones that are just really hot and you haven't hit yet?
It's interesting. There's some markets that there are plenty of mosquitoes and plenty of people and plenty of disposable income, and I would have thought we would have a location there by now, and we don't. Wow, we've never had a franchise in Twin Cities, never had a franchise in Kansas City, never had a franchise in Nashville. These are big markets. So those are just a few that come to mind. I would love to find a franchisee there. We've got a franchisee that's probably an hour outside of Nashville, but that's about as close as we get to that.
Okay.
But, it's really not about that. I've come to realize, like, it really is more about the quality of the franchise owner. So I don't care where you are, if you're the right fit for us, if you're a right fit for this tribe, if we're a right fit for you, we're mutually a good fit. That's kind of where the magic happens, because I've had franchisees who come into our system and they haven't done well. And they've come into this like great market where it's like, oh, you are going to crush it. You're going to destroy it. And then that owner just won't show up to do the work. They're a little bit more on the absentee side of semi-absentee, right?
Yes.
And then we've had other franchisees where it's like, really? Do you even have mosquitoes in your market? How is it? So you really ask those questions, is your market big enough?
Right.
But it's the right owner, and they come in with the right mindset and the right attitude, and they're disciplined with themselves. They challenge themselves, and they do a great job. They crush it. So to me, awesome. I've come to learn, I really don't care where you are. If you see that there's market need, we offer all these different pest control options. We should have a conversation, because the personality is really what determines your success.
I think that's awesome. Very cool. Kqaren, do you have any last questions? I love this. Sounds like a great brand with a strong reputation. You've got great culture.
Yeah. Anything that we didn't ask you, maybe some key things that you would like for us to know about Mosquito Hunters that we didn't discuss.
I would say, just the other thing, just to keep in mind, if you take nothing else from this, listeners, is keep in mind, this is something where we want you to be generating revenue 12 months out of the year. So mosquito control is seasonal in a place like Chicago, but it's a lot more than mosquito control. And that's kind of our foot in the door. It's a great way that we can get customers to get to know us and like us and trust us. But then from there, we have a lot more opportunities. So don't let the name always deceive you. Cheesecake Factory sells more than just cheesecakes.
Love it. Great analogy.
Yeah.
Foot Locker has more than just shoes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's kind of that. Guitar Center has more than just guitars.
Yeah.
That's all that I got. But anyway, you get the idea.
Go on and on. Yes, we've got your idea. That's very good. Yeah.
Right. Well, we did have a couple of little comments that I'll share with you from the audience, but so one wants to know if you already have a franchise in Washington, D.C. to help with the politicians, which I find. Yes.
Okay, that goes for Chicago too, just saying.
Yeah, really.
I just love our audience. And then we have another one that says, are you related at all to Robert Redford? Because they think you look like a young Robert Redford.
Let me get their address. I'm going to put them on my Christmas card list this year. I've been called way worse than that. All right. Appreciate that.
Well, listen, I think even in our audience, we have people who are distracted by shiny objects. And so sometimes we get a little off base, but the politician one was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
So let's just get one last question that I have for you, because we do like to make sure we're making data-driven decisions, and we want to make sure that as brokers, nobody is selling a Mosquito Hunters to the wrong type of people, and we like things to be data-driven. So what are a couple of things on your franchise disclosure document that you think really make your brand stand out and prove that it is a valuable investment?
I'd say, look at item 6, look at item 7, look at what our costs are to get started relative to some of the other businesses that are out there. You can get an idea of what it's like to run this on an ongoing basis, really limited overhead, mitigates your risk. The greatest risk that you have is your competition, and your competition is actually the person who lives in the mirror. That's what's really holding you back. If you can overcome that, then there's a lot of possibilities, and a lot more is within your control when you have limited overhead. And then, of course, everybody wants to look at the item 19. Those numbers will speak for themselves. We share a lot of information in there, and it can be kind of overwhelming, honestly.
Yeah.
I have a lot of franchise owners tell me it's like the data really helped, but at the same time, I know, like, I've been reading FDDs for a long time. They're a great thing to read if you're having a hard time falling asleep. They'll put you right out.
I totally agree with that one.
So I'd say, really, look at the item 20. That's the big one. Look at how many terminations they have, how many locations they have. Talk to existing franchisees. Every once in a while, I'll have a friend or a friend of a friend reach out to me, say, hey, talk to Andy because he's in the franchising business. And I always say, like, it doesn't matter. It only matters so much. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it only matters so much what you see presented in front of you. What you really need to do is talk to the owners, talk to as many owners as you can. If I were in the shoes of anyone, forget Mosquito Hunters for a second, but just if I were looking to invest into a franchise, I would talk to, I would get to the point where I'm really annoying the franchise development person. I would say, let me talk to 10 people. Let me talk to 20 people. Like, I want to ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
And that is going to give me a really good insight into, what is this brand really all about, and what's it like to be an owner?
I couldn't agree with you more. That's what sold me on this, because we compared 3, and it was the just overwhelming response of the sense of family, and everybody was in it together, and the culture was good. And I think that, after talking to you today, I feel very confident in your brand, and I'm super excited to see where you go. You've got some really great synergies with the Happy Nest umbrella, and I think that will really do you well. So thank you so much for coming on our show today. It was so nice to finally meet you, and you're just down the street.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to do it in person next time.
That's good.
That sounds fabulous. We'd be happy to have you.
Thanks
Great
for having
talking
me.
with you.
Appreciate it,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you, Andy. Have a great day.
Bye.
And we'll be back right after this. What are the top 3 reasons that you should tune in to Pillars of Franchising? 1, franchise advice from a Million Dollar mentoring team. And 2, how about interviews from franchise professionals and influencers? And number 3, how about getting some professional tips on buying, growing, and exiting your franchise? Join us on Pillars of Franchising to learn about the secrets of franchising success. You can find us at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you listen to your podcast. So for the record, Jerry, I just threatened his life if he doesn't get rid of that commercial.
Kristin, I laugh every time I see that. That is just hilarious. And it gets even better when in the middle of it, you take the glasses off and you're kind of lounging back or something, it's special.
Oh, special's a great word for it, let me tell you. The only thing I regret is I hadn't had a couple more cocktails to make it even more enjoyable, let me tell you.
I need a copy of it. I need a copy. What?
Enough about me. Let's go to you. You've been on the road. We haven't seen you in weeks. I get these little things. I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. We all know that you are our special person who gets to hang out with those pesky politicians and really try to affect some of the change that the franchise industry needs so desperately. So tell me, where have you been? What have you been doing?
Well, just in the last week, I was in DC for 4 days and got to do the IFA advocacy fly-in, where we hear from several of our representatives in group sessions about what's going on up there. And then, the people from IFA explain some of the regulations and bills and so on being discussed or potentially put in place that will impact franchising in this case, but small business in many cases. And so, I just got to spend 4 wonderful days up there. I took 6 showers when I got home. Still wasn't quite enough to, do away with all the sludge that I brought back with me. But we had some really great meetings. Because of the involvement with IFA, we got to have several representatives come and talk to us in very small groups. Senator Joe Manchin, Kristin came in and spoke to us. And those are, obviously 2 that have developed a little bit of a name as being those that tend to protect the business model when others are doing things or suggesting things that would be negative towards franchising overall. So we tend to listen to them from time to time because, educating them, giving them ammunition when they're going back to be engaged in those committee meetings and so on is critical to our long-term success. So those are 2 of my favorites, but we heard from many of them while we were there, and then got to go with our state groups and go to talk to our state representatives.
Now, let me ask you, because the last time that you had done one of these, you actually testified on the Hill, and there were a couple of folks there that had actually been in the franchise business. So the 2 that you mentioned that were there and are advocates for franchising, have they ever been in the franchise business?
No.
Okay.
But, when Senator Joe Manchin, his father and his grandfather owned 2 separate businesses in a small town in West Virginia. So he grew up working in small businesses. He saw, how they went into debt to build the businesses, how they had to give a lot of hard work, a lot of lost nights, sleep, a lot of questions in the bad months and things like that. So he truly gets it. Senator Sinema, speaks as though she's been in business. She seems to understand it. And so, as I said, educating them is pretty powerful. We have had, when I testified, there were several that spoke up and asked me questions based on their franchise history. In fact, one of them, Congressman Moran from Tyler, Texas, met him almost by accident when I testified and before I testified. And he literally said, I'm on that committee. I wasn't planning on being there because I'm in another meeting, but I'll drop out of that meeting, come in. What would you like me to ask you? What question would you like me to ask you to allow you to elaborate on something that maybe wouldn't come up in other people's questions? So, when you have people like that there, you've got some people looking out for your best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the negotiations with the governor, giving some stability to franchising. What's that all about?
Yeah, so California, the place where most bad ideas start and then become worse. There's this ongoing push in California to burden franchise systems and even small businesses with enhanced pay, which I think everybody should make what they make. I don't have any issues with that, but government regulated pay that is literally on a scheduled increase over a period of years is very difficult for businesses to handle. And so that's where we were in California. And California was also, going to be the first state that actually had something related to joint employer in place, which is many would say the death of the franchise model as we know it, because large corporations will manage all of our employees. It won't be Jerry managing my group of employees or Kristin or whatever. So they were in a position where they actually were going to put that in place. IFA, as well as the National Restaurant Association, many franchisors and some other groups got together and were able to get enough signatures that forced California to put that on the ballot in 2025, I believe it is.
Okay.
And all those organizations put millions of dollars into a pot and advertised that it was there to fight to win that election. And I think the determination that came out through that was the other side needed to do some negotiating to not have to lose at the ballot. So Governor Newsom asked to meet with that group, and a negotiated settlement came into play. The one thing I didn't talk about was part of the original bill was there was going to be a council of unelected non-business owners who would make all the decisions about employees in our businesses in the state of California. So this negotiated settlement gave them a couple extra dollars of minimum wage starting very soon. So that for franchise owners is a bit of a hit, and there's some negative comments coming out of that. But what is locked in is the council is still in place, but they have no authority other than a little bit over some pay increases, not a lot, just a little bit. So they can't regulate how we deal with our employees and how we hold them accountable or any of those other kinds of things that we as employers have to do. Right. It created a 6-year moratorium, if you will, where this is the reality for the next 6 years. So we may not have as many battles in California for the next 6 years as we have in the past 6 years. Sure. And then we'll see what happens after that. So, I mean, that's just broad brush strokes as to what went into that. And as painful as it is for franchisees, from the labor standpoint, it's the best of a really bad situation and bad options.
Sure. Well, I think what's interesting to me this time, unlike some of the times in the past, this particular summit seemed to really pull in a lot of franchisees that maybe in the past hadn't attended. And we had, I think the week before, perhaps it was, Scott Greenberg on. And I said, well, what are you going to do there? And he said, I'm going to teach a franchisee how to tell their story. And I thought, wow, that's actually really brilliant, because a lot of us don't know how to tell the story, not only of how we got where we are, but the trials and tribulations of getting here, how we're involved in the communities, how many jobs and families we affect. And, you know, hopefully you got to sit in on that and you found that to be very helpful in some of the discussions.
Well, many people go on these advocacy trips and they don't know what they're going to say or what they're going to do, and they feel apprehensive. And I've had friends who refuse to go because they're nervous about it. But in fact, you will be given some talking points. You'll have a chance to consider them and talk to other people about them, and present them in front of your representatives in really small groups. Like it was me and my daughter in our meetings. And even for the big states, it might only be 8 or 10. So it's not a very large group. You have a couple people that are designated as the people that do most of the speaking. But in reality, what we need to do is, as you said, tell our story. They want to hear about how we create jobs and how we treat our employees and how we pay taxes and, you know, how the regulations and other issues are impacting us. I know when I testified, Kristin, I literally said, when a regulation comes out of DC, it impacts one of two groups, and neither one of them is me. It impacts our customers and it impacts our employees, because the money it takes to pay for those regulations is going to come in some combination from those two groups. Yeah. Most of our businesses work on a pretty small margin already, so we have no more room to go. So we raise prices, we lower benefits for employees, we do whatever it takes to keep the playing field level. And Kristin, you're a great example. You just said this. I made this note because I wanted to kind of, jab you just a little bit with it, because you didn't realize some of the big hotels were franchise systems. Huh? And so if you think about us who live, eat, and breathe franchising, and we don't know about that, when our legislators are considering issues related to franchising, they think of McDonald's. Right. They think of the big food places. They think of 7-Eleven, who has had a lot of legal issues over the years. Subway. That's who they think of. Yeah. They don't think that the hotel they stay in all the time when they're on the road is also a franchise system. There's cleaning opportunities, there's hairstyling, there's chiropractic, there's massage. The list goes on and on and on. Oh, yeah. On. So we've got to also educate those people on all of those things. In fact, honestly, we talked about it before the show, and this isn't a pitch, but the bottom line is one of the final reasons I wrote the book that I wrote is so that some of our legislators would read it and get a feel for what it's like to put your house, to mortgage your house so you can open a franchise, to work, 60 hours a week to try and manage that business. I got a buddy that owns 3 sub shops, and he's always rotating between them, making sub sandwiches. because of the staffing issue. So we've got to do more to educate them. And I think, us from the heartland and from across America going to DC a couple times a year to do that is one of the easiest ways to have an impact on it. And there are a lot of other things going on there. And, it's like whack-a-mole. You know the game whack-a-mole?
Yeah.
So 2 times in the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a attempt to create a joint employer mandate in Washington, D.C. And we fight it off through Congress. A lot of times Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are at the forefront of helping with that. So they haven't given up, but they've decided to take the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, and have them create regulations outside of congressional oversight that will implement the same kinds of things. So that was one of the things we were talking to our representatives about. And you should see the look on a congressperson's face or a senator's face when you say, did you realize that they're trying to have the NLRB do your job? And they go, wait, tell me more about this. And then we get to, tell them. They're just quickly looking at their aides like this.
Right. Are they going to work me out of a job?
Yes. So I guarantee you there were some frantic phone calls made after that to get more information on that. So again, educating our representatives before committees, unelected officials, and things like that bring it into play is critical. The last thing I'll bring up, another end around, basically. The FTC a few months ago asked for, they sent out a request for comments related to franchising overall and any issues. And as good attorneys can do, the questions were phrased to elicit negative responses. So those of us that love franchising would read them and go, well, I don't have anything here. I mean, this is all kind of inconsequential. So, but if you were ever in that 1% that whether you didn't do a great job or it was a bad franchise system or whatever, you were in a bad spot, man, I'll tell you what, they were burning up the airwaves to get those comments in. So we had a concerted effort to get the message out to happy franchisees to comment on that line. And we had, a groundswell of those, got a lot of great conversations going. We warned the representatives that was still in the works. And we also told them, that the IFA was actually understanding of the need to update the FDDs, because all of us that read FDDs, Andy talked about this, right?
Yeah.
There's hundreds of pages in some of the FDDs if it's an older system.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even new systems have several pages. And let's face it, if you're a franchisee thinking of getting in, you're probably not going to read all of those. You're going to read 3 or 4 sections. And then if they're okay, you're going to move on. So we're making some suggestions. I'm on a working group with IFA to offer some suggestions about how to modernize the FDD to make it a kind of an executive summary with perhaps some links that they can get more information in certain areas or something like that. Something to make it more readable, more approachable, less intimidating. So, the fact that the FTC is doing this, we're hoping that they use caution and allow concerned individuals from the model to, kind of guide them through it.
Well, Jerry, obviously we could probably break this down even further, but we have to save some of this for you for next week when we have another episode of Pillars of Franchising. And I'm glad that we're keeping you busy. So thank you for bringing your update from Washington, D.C. at the IFA Advocacy Summit. And we will look forward to hearing more about things that affect franchising and the laws next week.
Thanks, Kristin.
Thank you, Jerry.
50 graduates, resulting in 7 new franchisees owning 8 franchise brands, more than a dozen skilled graduates who are employees of franchise companies, all of them having earned a concentration in franchising exclusively granted by the Titus Center at Palm Beach Atlantic University, plus more than 80 franchise professionals on our advisory board. The Titus Center for Franchising is on fire in West Palm Beach, Florida. What do you need to join us? My students want to hear from you. They may even want to buy your franchise or work for your company. TitusCenter.com.
And I'd like to thank you all for joining us on another episode of Pillars of Franchising today. Please remember to join us again next week at the same time, same channel. Big shout out today to Andy Fuller with Mosquito Hunters under the Happy Nest umbrella. We love Happy Nest brands and so excited to hear about these great opportunities. Special shout out again to our team here of Million Dollar Mentors, Ray Pillar, Kqaren Kimsey-Sward, Jerry Akers, and to our legal analyst, legal professional, we'll call her, Laura List. She's still off getting married, so I'm hoping she's coming back next week. She was taking a fabulous honeymoon somewhere, so hurry up, Laura. We need you back. I am Kristin Selmeczy, your fourth Million Dollar Mentor, today. And another thank you to Fred McMurray, our producer. This has been another episode of the Pillars of Franchising. Please remember to join us next week, again, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you get your podcast. And remember, the dream starts here. Have a great week.